So I realized that I have been linking videos to 90-90 breathing from like everyone except for me. So this is just an overview of 90-90 breathing, um, all the way from the very bare bones beginning to ideally putting it all together. If, as we go through, combining any of these added pieces becomes really difficult for you, I would encourage you to start with the first pieces because they sort of range from most important to not least important, but just like more complicated. So if the first pieces aren't in place, it doesn't make sense to add the other ones on. And you'll see what I mean as we go through. So we are going to start in the 90 position. So trying to get a 90-degree angle here and through your knees. And I'm just propped up like on a little table here, but you could use a couch. You can place your feet on a wall. I think it feels a little bit different when you've got something to dig your heels into later on. You'll sort of see that. But yeah, so figure out where you're going to do this. Another piece that I don't have here right now, but definitely would be easy enough to find, is if you have a ball or a yoga block or even like a pillow, you can place that in between your knees, and that can really help with cueing the right muscle groups, because there are some other ones that tend to take over, which I'll discuss in a minute. But all right, so from here, what you're going to do is you're going to start off by placing your hands on the insides of your hip bones. That's where we're going to be able to feel your TA contract. That's your transverse abdominis, basically your corset muscle that pulls you in like this. And ideally, what we're going to start off by doing is just trying to take in a deep breath. So taking in a deep breath. When we take in the breath, we are trying to breathe in through our nose, and then breathing out kind of like you want to fog a glass. So, right? The reason for that is just a difference in the way that we're going to recruit. If we have pursed lips versus open mouth breathing, it'll feel a little bit different. So one more time, taking a deep breath in, and then breathing all the way out. And if you've worked with a pelvic floor therapist, you know at this point that when you're doing that breath out, you should feel with your hands on the insides of your hip bone, the little part of the TA kind of pop up into it. If that's feeling really difficult for you, you can try some different cues. Two of the ones that I really like are thinking about pulling P up, so like zippering is a big cue we'll use. Picking up a marble with your vulva is another one that'll apply to some of you but not others. And then the other one is more mechanical, and it's that if you were imagining bringing one hip bone towards the other, that's really the action that we're looking for. So kind of like this, hip bone, hugging you. So one more time, hands on the inside of your hip bones. You're going to take a deep breath in, and then breathe out. Looking for that little TA contraction. For some of you, when you do this, one of the first things that I'm going to ask you to do is notice where you're breathing in, because a lot of people I work with tend to just breathe in like just through their bellies. It's not like wrong, but I want you to experiment with sending your breath in other directions. So one of the first ways you might do that, if you feel like you're a little limited, is you can place your hands on your rib cage and try to squeeze yourself just a little bit. So if I take my breath in, I'm going to feel like I want to expand against my hands. So breathing in, and then out. And then we can do the same thing with the chest. So placing your hands on your chest. Trying to send air towards your hands. And then you can do the same thing with arms open and with the area right through your upper back, thinking about pressing that through the floor as you breathe in. So I know I'm talking a lot, but in practice, this is actually really simple. It's just, 5 breaths, trying to notice as you're breathing in where you can send that air. Every time you breathe out, you're just doing a little lift, okay? Another big component is that as you're breathing in, sending air all over the place up, right? If you are someone who's familiar with pelvic floor range of motion, you know that as you breathe in, that pelvic floor should drop. Okay, so releasing your butthole, or maybe just allowing yourself to relax through the abdomen here. Those are things that are a little more difficult to tell if you're doing them right, but if you already know how to do them, this is an opportunity for you to practice. So once you've got that component grooving, right? And again, don't add these other things on if it feels like way too complicated to you. It's all right to stick with what's simpler. You can start to, when you squeeze, right? When you're actually pulling up, you can start to do a little light squeeze on whatever object you have between your knees. Okay, so it would be breath in. Light squeeze, all right? And the other component that people often find really difficult to do is to try now to get the hamstrings involved in this breathing pattern. So when you breathe out, you actively want to pull your heels down through whatever object you're on. So if you're on the wall, it's like you're trying to slip right down the wall. Your feet aren't going to actually move, and that's what actually starts to light up your hamstrings. So once again, deep breath in. Pelvic floor drops. And on your out breath, you're lifting and you are pulling heels down through that object. So when I cue people to do this, often what happens is they do tend to feel like their glutes take over, and it's not like the end of the world if you use your butt, but it's definitely not what we're aiming for with this particular drill. So that is actually where the little thing you're squeezing does tend to come in handy. Sometimes that can kind of quiet the glutes a little bit. The other thing that you can do is you can place a little towel roll underneath your lower back, and sometimes that can help you to get a little more hamstrings. But yeah, so the full motion ideally looks like breathing in, and if the hips do lift a little bit, that's okay. But we're not really aiming for that so much as we're aiming for that recruitment. You really do want to feel like your hamstrings are working. So very long-winded, but felt like I really needed to get a video where I talked through the entire process of knowing how to do this. Hopefully, if you're doing your breathing, right, you can just leave this on, and as I'm jabbering away in your ear, you've got plenty of opportunity to be reminded of some of the cues that we want to be working on. The reason that this is so important is because breathing is really the foundation of everything that we're doing, right? You breathe many, 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 many times a day. It's going to change the shape of your axial skeleton. And that is going to really determine how you move up here, right? Is going to determine how your appendicular skeleton, your arms, your legs end up functioning and moving. So yeah, give that a try. If you have any questions, let me know.